Thailand, a country known for its golden temples, turquoise seas, and warm hospitality. For millions of travelers, it's the dream destination, a place where stress melts away under palm trees and endless sunshine. But beneath the paradise lies a darker story. For years, whispers have spread among travelers about one particular island resort, a resort so beautiful it could be a postcard, but one that hides a chilling secret. Guests check in for the vacation of a lifetime. Some never check out. Their deaths, sudden and unexplained, have haunted this island for over a decade. This is the story of the so-called tourist death trap, a mystery buried under sand, sealed in silence, and denied by those who profit from paradise. The first suspicious deaths date back to the early 2000s. At first, they looked like tragic coincidences. Tourists who partied too hard, drank too much, or underestimated the tropical heat. But soon, patterns began to emerge. One young woman was found lifeless in her bungalow, with no signs of struggle. Another couple collapsed after dinner, their bodies discovered side by side. In each case, the victims were young, healthy, and had no known medical conditions. Autopsies were vague. Some listed heart failure, others blamed food poisoning. But families were left unsatisfied. How could healthy adults simply drop dead overnight? In 2011, two young women, one from Canada, the other from the United States, were traveling together through Southeast Asia. They checked into the resort after weeks of backpacking, looking forward to rest and relaxation. Within days, both were dead. Witnesses recalled them vomiting violently the night before. By morning, they were gone. Local police concluded it was food poisoning, but toxicology reports hinted at something more sinister, possible pesticide exposure. The case drew headlines worldwide, but no answers. In 2012, two sisters from Norway, aged just 22 and 27, were found lifeless in their hotel room on the island. The scene was eerie. No signs of forced entry, no evidence of drugs, no clear cause of death. Their bodies showed signs of internal bleeding. Some speculated rat poison, others pointed to pesticides sprayed inside the rooms. Once again, authorities moved quickly to close the case. The official cause? Unknown. To this day, their family believes the truth was buried along with their daughters. In 2015, an American couple celebrating their anniversary checked into the same resort. They spent their days exploring, swimming, and enjoying cocktails by the beach. One evening, they returned to their room after dinner. The next morning, hotel staff found them unresponsive. Authorities blamed alcohol, but relatives insisted the couple were responsible drinkers. An independent toxicologist later suggested they may have been exposed to lethal levels of insecticide, possibly from fumigation. The case was quietly dismissed. By now, the pattern was undeniable. Victims were often young and healthy. Deaths occurred suddenly, sometimes overnight. Symptoms included nausea, vomiting, seizures, and respiratory distress. Autopsies were vague or inconclusive. And above all, authorities denied any connection. Each case was treated as an isolated incident, a tragic but unrelated accident. But families began to ask, how many accidents can one resort have before it stops being coincidence? As the body count grew, so did the theories. Some believed pesticides were to blame. Resorts across Southeast Asia often fumigate heavily to keep mosquitoes and bedbugs at bay. If chemicals were misused or sprayed in enclosed spaces, they could easily kill. Others pointed to alcohol. Reports circulated of tourists drinking from minibars or bars near the resort and collapsing soon after. Was bootleg liquor, laced with methanol, silently poisoning guests? Still others whispered darker theories: criminal activity, organ trafficking, or deliberate cover-ups. The lack of transparency only fueled suspicion. For grieving families, the hardest part wasn't just the loss, it was the silence. Parents, siblings, and partners begged for investigations. They wrote letters to embassies, hired private pathologists, and pleaded with the Thai government. In nearly every case, they hit the same wall: vague reports, uncooperative authorities, and missing evidence. One father described it as losing your child twice, once to death and once to the cover-up. As official channels failed, families turned to the internet. Facebook pages, blogs, and travel forums became the new battleground. Photos of smiling victims, taken days before their deaths, were posted alongside pleas for justice. Travelers began sharing their own unsettling stories. Mystery illnesses, sudden blackouts, or close calls at the same resort. The phrase, "tourist death trap," began circulating online, warning others of the hidden danger. Faced with mounting criticism, the resort broke its silence. In carefully worded statements, they denied responsibility. They insisted the property was safe, inspected regularly, and that all incidents were tragic coincidences unrelated to the resort. They pointed out that thousands of guests stayed there every year without incident, but critics argued that was precisely the point. Only a small number had to die to create a hidden crisis, one that could be explained away as chance. The Thai authorities echoed the resort's stance. Tourism is one of Thailand's largest industries, employing millions and generating billions in revenue. Any admission of danger could devastate the economy. And so, officials blamed dehydration, heat stroke, or underlying conditions. They insist chilling headlines. And yet, people kept coming. The lure of cheap paradise was too strong. Some checked out with memories of sun and sand. Others left in coffins. The island had earned its reputation, a paradise that could kill. By 2019, whispers had become loud enough to attract international media. Major outlets began sending reporters to Thailand, determined to uncover the truth behind the growing list of unexplained deaths. One investigative team from Europe spent weeks interviewing locals and tourists. They spoke to former employees of the resort, hospital staff, and even low-level police officers who had handled the cases. The picture that emerged was disturbing. Several medics admitted, off the record, that autopsies were rushed. Bodies were often embalmed before full toxicology screens were completed, making it nearly impossible to identify poisons. Police, under pressure from higher authorities, rarely conducted thorough investigations. And resort owners? They denied everything, calling the deaths tragic coincidences. The journalists discovered something else. These deaths weren't unique to this resort. Scattered across Thailand, from Chiang Mai to Phuket, similar cases appeared. Young, healthy tourists collapsing suddenly, autopsies vague, families left with no answers. The island resort wasn't the only place with a dark reputation, but it had one of the highest clusters of suspicious deaths. Medical experts consulted by reporters offered chilling possibilities. Some pointed to organophosphates, a class of powerful insecticides banned in many countries, but still used illegally in parts of Southeast Asia. Exposure, especially in poorly ventilated rooms, could cause symptoms identical to those reported by victims: dizziness, nausea, muscle weakness, and eventually, respiratory failure. Others suggested methanol poisoning. Methanol, a toxic form of alcohol, is sometimes used to cut costs in cheaply made liquor. Even small amounts can cause blindness, organ failure, or death. But without preserved samples, these theories remained speculation. Authorities insisted nothing unusual was found, but critics argued the tests were never done, or deliberately inconclusive. Why would authorities deny the obvious? The answer lay in Thailand's heavy reliance on tourism. Every incident of tourist death risked headlines that could devastate the local economy. Acknowledging a pattern could spark panic, driving travelers away. And so, officials leaned on convenient explanations. Dehydration, heat stroke, allergic reactions, food poisoning. Each case wrapped neatly in a story that reassured the public. But for families, these explanations felt hollow. They believed their 2019 saw a string of sudden tourist deaths linked to tainted alcohol. Guests collapsed in hotel rooms or after drinking from minibars. Officials there, too, were quick to blame natural causes, until international scrutiny forced acknowledgement. In Mexico, reports surfaced of tourists blacking out after a single drink at resort bars. Some woke in hospitals, others never woke at all. Investigations pointed to tainted liquor and poor oversight. Even in Cambodia and Vietnam, similar whispers spread. Young, healthy tourists dying suddenly. Explanations vague, investigations shallow. What linked them all was a pattern of denial, driven by the fear of harming tourism. The Thai Island resort was simply one of the most infamous examples. Not everyone died. Some guests left with terrifying survival stories. One traveler, a German backpacker named Lucas, recalled waking in the middle of the night, gasping for air. His chest felt tight, his muscles weak. He stumbled out of his bungalow and collapsed outside. Other guests rushed to help, carrying him into fresh air. He survived, but described a chemical taste in his mouth and a burning in his lungs that lasted for days. Another tourist, a Canadian woman, drank cocktails at the bar and blacked out after only 2 drinks. She woke up in a local clinic, disoriented, with no memory of the night. Doctors told her she was lucky. Her blood alcohol levels were dangerously high, despite consuming little. These survivors became the missing pieces of the puzzle. Their testimonies matched the symptoms experts had warned about: chemical exposure, methanol poisoning, toxins in the environment. Yet still, authorities dismissed them as isolated incidents. By the late 2010s, backpacker forums and travel blogs were flooded with warnings. Posts with titles like "Do not stay at this resort" and "Tourist Death Trap in Thailand" circulated widely. Some included links to news articles, others listed the names of victims, and many shared personal experiences of illness or near misses. But the internet is noisy. For every warning, there were glowing 5-star reviews. Some travelers claimed they had the best vacation of their lives at the resort. The contradiction only fueled suspicion. Were the positive reviews genuine, or were they planted to drown out the negative? To this day, no one knows for sure. Heartbroken but determined, families of the victims began organizing. They connected online, sharing their stories, autopsy reports, and suspicions. Together, they formed an informal coalition. They wrote letters to the Thai government, petitioned their own leaders back home, and spoke to international media. One mother, in an emotional interview, said, "My daughter went on the trip of a lifetime. Instead, we brought her home in a coffin. And still, we don't know why." That is the cruel everything. The deaths, the headlines, the warnings. The resort still operates. Tourists still check in. Photos of sunsets and beaches still flood Instagram. For some, it is paradise. For others, it is their final destination. The dual reality persists. A cheap slice of heaven on the surface, with a dark history buried beneath. And that is perhaps the most chilling part of all. Long before mainstream media paid attention, there existed a quiet underground of whispers. Expat forums, late-night bar conversations, and encrypted group chats among seasoned travelers told the same story. Something is wrong on that island. Old-timers warned backpackers to avoid certain resorts. They spoke of chemicals sprayed in rooms without proper ventilation, of minibars stocked with dangerous knockoff liquor, of mysterious men showing up after every incident to clean the scene. These warnings rarely reached the broader public. They lived only in the shadows, passed from traveler to traveler like forbidden knowledge. And by the time newcomers heard them, it was often too late. One of the most consistent suspicions was bribery. In Thailand, where tourism accounts for nearly 20% of GDP, the stakes are enormous. Every death that made headlines threatened billions of dollars in revenue. Whistleblowers claimed resort owners paid police to close cases quickly. Local officials, dependent on tourism taxes, looked the other way. Even low-level workers were discouraged from speaking out. One former police officer confessed anonymously to a foreign reporter, "If you say too much, you lose your job." Maybe worse. Everyone knows the deal. Keep quiet, or you disappear. It was a chilling reminder. Silence wasn't just encouraged, it was enforced. Researchers analyzing case files noticed a disturbing rhythm. Case closed within days. Cause of death? Inconclusive, or natural causes. Bodies embalmed before toxicology. Families pressured to accept results. The repetition was almost mechanical, as though written from the same script. And then came the silences, the missing files, the interviews cut short, the survivors who suddenly stopped talking. It was as if an invisible hand ensured the mystery would remain unsolved. This wasn't just a Thai problem. Around the world, tourist economies seemed to play the same game. In Egypt, resorts along the Red Sea saw clusters of sudden tourist deaths, often attributed to natural causes. Families reported cover-ups, rushed autopsies, and stonewalled. Frustrated by official inaction, a handful of independent investigators took matters into their own hands. They returned to the resort undercover, booking the same rooms where victims had died. They collected air samples, water samples, even residue from the minibar bottles. One team discovered traces of chlorpyrifos, a pesticide banned in the US but still available in parts of Asia. Exposure, even in small amounts, can be lethal in poorly ventilated spaces. Another group tested minibar alcohol and found dangerous levels of methanol, the same poison responsible for deaths in the Dominican Republic. These findings were explosive, but without government backing, they remained unofficial. Authorities dismissed them as unscientific, yet to families, they felt like the missing puzzle pieces. Under growing pressure, the resort finally issued a statement. They expressed condolences for the tragedies, but denied any wrongdoing. They claimed the property was inspected regularly, the staff trained in safety, and that incidents were isolated and unrelated. Their PR team pointed to thousands of satisfied guests who had stayed without incident. If the resort were dangerous, they argued, how could so many enjoy their holidays without harm? It was a compelling point, until you remembered the survivors who spoke out and the families who buried their children. Some researchers suggested something even darker: organized crime. The island was rumored to be a hub for smuggling and trafficking. What if the resort was more than a vacation spot? What if it doubled as a cover operation? The theory went like this: tainted alcohol, pesticides, or toxins weren't accidental. They were warnings, punishments, or collateral damage from criminal networks that operated in the shadows. There was never hard proof, but the whispers refused to die. For families, theories meant little compared to the crushing reality of loss. A father described standing in his daughter's empty room, still decorated with postcards she had sent from Thailand. A mother clutched her son's backpack, returned from the authorities with his belongings inside. Everything except the truth. They lived in a purgatory of unanswered questions, replaying the same thought over and over. What really happened in that room? Despite everything, planes still land, ferries still unload, and tourists still flood the island. Happy couples sip cocktails by the beach. Influencers pose at sunset. Travel agencies sell the dream. The machine of tourism doesn't stop. Not for grief, not for whispers, not for ghosts. For the living, the resort is paradise. For the dead, it is a tomb. And for the families, it is a wound that never heals. The mystery of the Thai Island Resort may never be solved. Too many files lost, too many bodies misfound.